What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Immortal Minds. Today, of course, we have Mike and myself, but joining us is special guest ShahZam. What's up, man? How's it going?
Good. What's up?
Yeah, just ready to get this show rolling. What have you been up to, Mike? We haven't had a
Just
patch for you to be raged about, so you in good
yeah,
spirit?
yeah, doing pretty good. I just looked at the Chelsea score for my fantasy team, and they're down 3-0 now, so that's pretty sick.
I don't have any time to follow traditional sports, man. I think this is just a sign that you're not esports enough.
Yeah, fair. You're not even British anymore. You don't even follow your own soccer league.
Yeah, pretty much. Do you follow any sports, ShahZam, or is it all esports for you as well?
The NBA. I love basketball, so
Oh,
been
nice.
watching the playoffs.
Nice. Actually, that brings me back to the first time I ever spoke to you, I think, back at E-League. We had there was this thing in Vegas at CES, I think.
Oh yeah, that was
Like
a long
interview
time
you.
ago.
Yeah, because you were you playing I think it was Optic you were playing with back then,
Yeah,
I
it was
think.
right when we announced Optic. Like I think the day before we flew out for the tournament.
That was pretty sick. Did you get to meet some of the legends then, like, Shaq
Yeah,
and
I
Charles Barkley?
met Shaq and Mark Cuban at that event. I remember they like
Nice.
came backstage and wanted to meet us and stuff, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, they are enormous humans. It's like,
Yeah, I shook Shaq's hand and I don't even know if I shook his hand or he just grabbed mine and said
It's
hi.
uh it's really weird. It's so surreal. But right. So normally on this show we love to talk about patch changes and stuff. But as I already alluded to, we didn't get a patch this week, obviously. So um it would be great to get some of your thoughts on some of the things in the meta and maybe what you would want to see and so on. But I think maybe first it would be more pressing to actually talk about, I suppose, what's the biggest news announcement this week, which is the announcement of First Strike, which is Riot finally saying, hey, we're going to actually take a tournament into our own hands. We're not going to let a third party organizer do it this time. And it's going to have these qualifiers, these regional qualifiers, and it's going to build into this finals, and it's going to be this open system. But that's kind of all the details really I feel like we got from it. Do you have any? Is there enough there for you to be happy or sad or have any expectations? What are your thoughts on First Strike?
Uh, I mean, yeah, I'm excited. I think that like you know how they kind of said it originally, they wanted it to be a bit of like an open circuit, let different people host tournaments, and it seems like this is their transitioning into taking more control over the esports circuit themselves. Um, I think the coolest thing is how they're trying to make this as open as possible. You know, we just had the Pop Flash tournament where like it was super well run, good production, but it was also very limited and like there's still other good teams that didn't even get to participate. While this is completely open qualifiers, um, the requirements are being 16 and like I think Immortal and ranked, so they really want other people like trying to get into esports if they're just playing like casually in my eyes. Um, so I think it's like it's like a good direction for them to go.
Yeah, it definitely feels like it's really exciting because there's no reason for them to do it unless they could really blow our socks off as well. And in the sense that I'd imagine we would get at least a new, an observer mode. Presumably, that would be in effect for the broadcasting. So the broadcast is going to look a lot better. It's going to be easier for people to follow the action. On top of, I'm sure, like a lot of other things that will polish the broadcast experience. So that as someone that's a commentator is very exciting because so far I feel like we've gotten a lot of amazing Valorant, despite the fact that we've not had the tools to really show it, like in Counter Strike, where we've got all these advanced, UIs and HUDs and stuff, and just all these other tools and great observers with lots of experience. And I think actually, one thing I want to mention quickly, I think it was the TSM Sentinels rivalry that really first I think showed how how much theater can kind of come from this game and how exciting and intense it can be. So how was that whole like rivalry for you? That's something I want to talk about on this episode. And it might come up a few times, but that was nuts.
Yeah, that I remember that match had like an absurd viewership as well. Like it's always like a back and forth between us. I think that that's like a definitely a crucial element is like, the game's gonna be there and I think like the game will evolve itself in terms of like the gameplay and stuff. But having like the right spectators tools to make it like a true spectator sport, like some of the other successful esports is definitely there. Um, when it comes to us at TSM, We definitely feel like we have the upper hand, but it's not like I'm gonna discredit them as like not being a good team. There's definitely some rivalries going on outside of just the server, it feels like now, but I think that just makes it more exciting.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's something that definitely I think it was so perfect. Like it couldn't have been more perfect at the time, as you say. Like at the Phase Invitational, it all came to a head. We had the rematch as well in the grand finals. It was just a beautiful storyline to really invest people and show what this game's capable of. And in terms of a rivalry, Valorant versus Counter Strike, do you see it as something that is very different because there's more opportunity to surprise your opponent because you can change up compositions on them, or how do you prepare for a team that's only studying to beat you? What's the difference compared to CS?
Yeah, I think in CS, the meta's very played out. Like a lot of the good teams are doing the same things. Like you kind of follow the similar protocols. Your options and certain types of strategies and executes are like very similar. It's really rare you see something new that's kind of changing the meta. Well, in this game is like in order to be consistent, you have to like fully understand the different looks people have. When teams are running a certain comp or like not running certain agents, then you have to play differently accordingly to that. And like keep being mindful of that while playing is like the biggest difference is understanding all these different looks and being on the same page with your team about them. That's like the biggest challenge we faced initially, like starting practicing, and I think one of the best things that we understand now.
Yeah, and you guys have like a really interesting kind of grouping of players as well. I think um, it's just been really cool to see, firstly, all of the players from CES sort of reinvigorate themselves coming into a new title entirely. But then you've got obviously someone like Sinatraa that's thrown into the mix. And at first, when I was watching him play, I think like a lot of people, it was hard not to have extremely high expectations. I mean, this is the guy that won the MVP in the Overwatch League, effectively the best representation from that game possible. And to begin with, it wasn't. I was like, I'm not really seeing like doesn't seem like he has better mechanics than anyone else. Looks kind of like there's nothing special going on here. But then as time went on, and he got to learn the game more, he's just become an incredible innovator on the server. That's what it appears like. He can play multiple agents at a very high level. What's it been like sort of playing with an Overwatch pro?
It's good. I mean, like he's I think the biggest thing about him is that he's always playing confident. No matter like what we ask him to do, whether it's he's a very aggressive player, but like go in, play a certain agent or do a certain thing, like he doesn't hesitate to do it and go in. And I think that's one of the things is like some people might hesitate and like think tactically this might not be like the most tactical idea or something, but Jay is the confidence to just go in, and he's also got the skill set to back it up. Um, the mechanical skill gap in this game for gunplay is not like I think big as like CS is, but you could tell that his mechanics are definitely a step above everyone else's in the server too.
Yeah, he does seem to have that kind of raw ability that does shine in those clutch moments. The one thing that I'm doing right now is I'm kind of getting a little bit ahead of myself. I want to reel things back and go back to kind of more of a discussion around the patch and the current meta and agent compositions and so on and so forth. Get out of the way with before we kind of go into the nitty gritty with some of your teammates and the team and the NA scene and so on. And so, you're somebody that you're at the top level in the NA scene where the Jett meta really feels like it's very oppressive. And last week, everyone expected that Jett was going to get some changes, and she didn't. We talked about it a little bit on the previous show, but I'd love to get your thoughts on what you feel like the patch should have had. Should there have been a Jett nerf? Why does Breach have 3 flashes? These kinds of things. Like, what are your thoughts on everything that's gone down so far with the patches?
Yeah, I definitely expected a Jet nerf too. Despite us not originally running Jet on a lot of maps, I think that she's still a bit overpowered. For me personally, I think that the dash should just dash in the direction that she's facing, and I think that would like accomplish the goal of her being like an entry duelist and going in and breaking chip wires or whatever, instead of just taking every quote unquote bad angle possible and getting away with it to get free kills. As well as her knives, I think the ultimate would be perfectly fine if it was just the left clicks and they got rid of the right click. I think that like that way, I feel like it's a bit more balanced. You have to still aim and like be mechanically talented to use it, but then you can also just completely take over a round without getting like free kills close range. Um, So I know there's like a lot of discussion like Jet meta. But in like all of our previous tournaments, we ran Jet only on Split, and then we started to run Jet on Haven as well. For the most part, like I think that there's so much focus on it because it is flashy and it's easy to get a lot of kills. But I think when it comes to like winning rounds and being tactical, like we didn't exclusively like focus on using Jet. Um, Other characters are better for like on Ascent. Like everyone was running Jet, but we were running Breach because Breach could literally take map control by himself. His ultimate could cover a whole site, and like that's what's gonna win you rounds is these abilities that'll open up the site for your teammates more so than like getting kills. Because I think versus good teams, you can good teams are gonna be able to avoid like the Jet's like typical angles and stuff. But with Sage gone now and Breach being very overpowered, we've started running Jet more and more until she does get nerfed on all these maps. Breach is definitely very, very overpowered. Actually, one of the Riot devs reached out to me asking me my opinion on the Breach buff and the 3 flashes, and they kind of realized like they wanted originally to just be able to take map control with these flashes and then be able to have utility to hit the site. But then they realized that on defense, it's becoming really overpowered because people are just flash peeking the same chokes, and it's becoming impossible for the attackers to even like progress. So I'd expect like a breach nerf pretty soon from my conversation with him.
Do you think they would take in the direction of they would like try to bring it back to 2 flashes, or may do something like cooldowns in between so you can't just like spam them consistently?
Yeah, when I spoke to him, I actually recommended like a cooldown in between, like a decent amount, so that like people aren't like hitting a site and just flash spamming the same spot, so the defenders are not just blind the whole time. Because that's what it seems like is happening in scrims right now. I feel like I'm getting breach flash so much constantly in practice. It's being a little annoying to play against. But I think they're gonna do one of those things and try to focus on improving his like stun because like that's an ability that people aren't even using because like the flash you have so many of them and it just you pull it out instantly and can flash. So I think they want to make his other abilities a bit more useful.
Yeah, I think it's like especially cool because like a lot of the EU teams that Blast as well, they actually started using Breach because why wouldn't you at this point? And they all had like set opening fault lines. So like I know FPX on Bind short outside A, they have a fault line that negates like any peak short from the box and then front of showers as well. So it's like you can cover so much area and stop them from getting like any like defenders from getting any opening map control.
Yeah, no, it's a strong ability. I think that they wanted the focus to be on that too instead of just the flashes. Like right now with breach, what we'll do is like we'll have our breach player like constantly max fault lined or whatever like stun, so he's ready to use it anywhere on like a certain choke as soon as someone makes contact.
It's an interesting one in terms of like the philosophy of development and sort of maybe could indicate what we could see in the future because I mean, does is it something that's worrying to you as a pro player that let's say, especially coming from CS, because as you said in CS, the metas can be quite played out, and it's things can get kind of stagnant. It takes quite a lot of time to go from one meta to the next. It takes ages because of just how sort of simple the game is. It's just it flashes smokes, everyone has them, and it's about like constructing completely new tactics and strategies to deal with old ones. And in this game, it feels like the meta itself can shift much more quickly, much more organically as a reaction to what is strong now. Just pick a composition, find the right strategy, and boom, you're away. It's a lot easier to kind of implement that than in CS, where again, it just takes a lot more effort and theory and practice to really make something that's tight really have an answer to whatever is the current meta. Are you worried that this is like an example of right, like, well, we want people to use breach more, so we're just going to buff him, as opposed to just letting the pros figure it out?
Yeah, that's definitely something that's really different. Is like in CS, it was the players that create the meta, and it would evolve very slowly. Obviously, as people figure out the game and like people are all running maps a certain way, and then someone finds something to counter like the typical way to approach it, and then that's how the meta shifts. But in this game, that applies as well. Is like you can be way more creative with the agent compositions and the way you approach map control. So the players are creating the meta, and then like the changes are being implemented, and it's obviously becoming like a focus. I don't think it's so strong to like when Killjoy was added. I think you have to still be pretty smart about the way you look at it. Like you can't just see a new character like a change and like think, okay, force yourself to use it. Like, okay, this has been changed, like, or this character's been added. Let's implement him. You have to really think, I think, about if it's like think still like critically about it. Like, is this really gonna help? Like, I saw so many teams start using Killjoy in practice in matches in the last tournaments, on certain maps where I just felt like Cypher was so much better. I didn't think Killjoy was that good of a character originally, but all these teams started running them, and I feel like we were able to take advantage of the fact that they were running Killjoy. Uh, Cypher's not only got chip for info, but he's got a camera that can take map control by himself and clear out positions as well as cages, which is like a smoke. So like we experimented with Killjoy and like we realized on defense it's pretty good, but on attack, like as an individual, he has like or the character has like very few options. While I feel like Cypher is like way more well rounded.
That's an interesting take. It feels like it is really interesting because one thing that we saw Team Liquid doing is that triple duelist setup, and one of the things that it necessitated was that they actually have Killjoy with that particular comp. And I think it's a mixture of just having the turret and the alarm bot kind of be like Cypher's trips, and then you have the ability with the ultimate as well to have more power on the retakes, where otherwise you'd be probably struggling without the smokes and so on. Um, when you have you looked at any of the triple duelist setups very much?
Um, yeah, we tried it on Haven. Like we were so lost on Haven originally. Like I feel like we were progressing as a team. When it came to Haven, we were still trying to figure out what worked for us. And so we tried triple duelist. We tried no duelist. Like I don't think we ran any duelist on a set. Um, we don't necessarily focus on like the category of the character. We just look at like what's gonna work best for us in the way we want to push a map, and the way we want to take map control here, the way we want to run defense. But we also don't hesitate in like switching characters. Um, like on Bind originally we had Sinatraa and Phoenix, and then we decided to switch him to Raze like literally the same day of like a match in a tournament. And then again, now we have both Raze and Phoenix running. Uh, so we don't like shy away from trying just different comps, even in scrims. Like maybe one scrim in the same day we'll play like a certain agent, and then we'll switch it up like the next scrim or something just to see what works better.
So the real question is, when is Viper coming into the comp?
I don't know. I know they keep buffing Viper and like trying to make her viable, and like some pros are trying to use her and talking about her, but we still like don't see her. It's not that she's not viable anymore, but there's still like better options in our eyes. And like until we see like the stuff that we're doing is not working, when that happens is when we'll probably like see if like okay, Viper might be a better choice or something. But at least for now, it's like you can play her, you can make it work, but I think there are like better options with your comp choices.
Yeah, it feels like people are still figuring her out. Like I've seen some stuff that's really, really sick. Like Mike and I, when we were watching Mamba Modes Gaming playing the Pulse Invitational, they had some really cool setups with Viper. Like, and there's some stuff I haven't seen before that we hadn't seen before, and it's like, wow, okay, this is actually really sick and feels really strong. But the problem is that it's stuff like that with Viper feels like it's kind of dotted around here and there. It's not like she's generally very like figured out yet, and people know how to go from strength to strength with her in various situations. So I feel like it does still seem like there's a lot of time remaining in people maybe understanding how to make it more viable. Do you think that there's like a change that would necessitate that, or do you think that it is just a matter of time? That's kind of the character that she is.
I honestly don't know. Like, we played against some teams in practice running Viper, and it seems like at least like Viper on attack, they will try to set up the same thing, try to give the same look, but like deny info, so you don't know whether Viper's got her wall up in smokes, whether they're committing with this or they're not. But I feel like it's very easy to like, if you keep doing the same thing, it's very easy to build a plan around it to like get that info. Um, I think that when players start playing Viper, they should like really experiment with like giving different looks every round instead of like the focus the same look and denying info, but giving different looks and like not giving the other team a chance to like build a counter towards it. At least that's like what I've noticed in scrims, but still it's not a lot of teams. I think like maybe one that I've seen that even tries her right now. So I'd expect like even probably like another buff before people really try to play her.
I think like compared to the other controllers as well, it just like takes so much work to actually like and prep to slaughter into your team. Because like I think the reason people pick Omen a lot or Brim as well, it's like your positioning doesn't really matter as much because you can be anywhere on the map and helping your team with smokes. Whereas Brim and Viper are very like you need to like have your stuff figured out for that round. You can't be like reacting as much, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's really structured and like set ahead of time, but like that also goes against like the philosophy we kind of follow when we play is like it's way more loose. It's way more reacting and adapting to the ways other teams play.
You kind of reminded me a little bit when you're talking about how people are sort of predictable with how they use her and just repeat what they're doing. It reminded me of like how people play Cypher in the beginning, where obviously there's a lot of broken cameras and stuff, but people were like very obsessed by just very specific things, and people hadn't really figured out the strengths of how to actually play the agent dynamically yet. So I hope that we get something like that with Viper. I think she's super interesting. I think there's a lot that's possible with her. So we'll just see who's brave enough to integrate it. Another thing, actually, in terms of the patches that changed, obviously the Guardian was buffed again, and the price was lowered, the fire rate was increased, and so it should feel like pretty well, a lot better now. I think what is it, 2,500 credits? Is that
It's
now
2400.
2400, yeah.
24? Okay, so it's the Bulldog is 2,100, and I gotta say, Shaz, I've been surprised in previous tournaments like Pop Flash and so on, where I'm only seeing people buying the Bulldog. And I mean, the patch hadn't come in just yet, but I know you're someone who buys a lot of Bulldog, and I cannot make the ADS work like you can. So, I mean, the Bulldog, it feels like if you miss that ADS first burst, you are dead. So, I don't know. Are you buying the Guardian yet, or does it need to be changed even more?
I'm still buying the Bulldog. I think that when you're looking at buying like the Guardian or the Bulldog, you're probably like pretty strapped on cash or like and like the Bulldog being so cheap and in my opinion so powerful is like you get all your abilities. Like that's what you need your abilities. Like if you buy a Guardian and you don't have your Silva drone or something, like I think that you're trolling. Like you should get a Bulldog. I think the gun is like good for close range fights. Obviously not an ADS. Like you're going against pistols or something. Like you can control a spray or at least multi-frag. And then for long range fights, the burst is really easy to control. And I don't know, I just feel even if like your initial shot is not directly on their head, I feel like it's really easy to control the burst to like adjust it, like a small adjustment to their head and like still get the kill. Um, so I'm still a fan of the Bulldog. I still buy it. I know people in scrims are buying Guardians a little bit more since it's cheaper, but I think that's people just thinking like they have really cracked aim and they can just like get a one tap and take over around when like the Bulldog is so cheap and it's still a strong gun.
Dude, I remember, I think it was in Pop Flash actually. Like, I saw you standing, I think you were playing Jett on Haven, and you're standing on like the top of the boxes on B, just looking to face the window or whatever. And it was like the opponent's first gun round, and you're like holding a Bulldog. And I'm like, what is he doing? Does he think he can win this duel? But I think you're playing Jett, so you can dash away or whatever. But
Yeah,
that was
no.
pretty sick. I was like, that's some confidence right there.
With the ADS, I feel really confident
Yeah.
taking like any of these duels. I think the gun is strong. Maybe people will use it more, but
Okay, I'm gonna get on this. I feel like I've been sleeping on this. You know, a gun that I think people sleep on and I go back and forth with is the Stinger. Where you out in the Stinger?
well, I feel like Zoms is the first person I saw to really buy this gun and use it constantly. Like personally, I use this gun. I feel like I shoot at someone and all my bullets are like just disappeared, like and the enemy's not even dead. But this guy consistently gets kills, and it's really good because the rest of my teammates are so confident with the Stinger that like our force buys they're always down to like just buy Stingers like abilities and run in and like take these close range fights, and they just mill people with that gun. Personally, I'll get like a pistol and abilities, like if I force, while all of them will buy up Stingers, but uh, it has to be a powerful gun. We get a lot of like force by round ones off that, so it's definitely underrated.
Yeah, yeah, dude, run it like you can just like run with it. If someone's fairly close range, they just instantly melt. It's actually kind of nuts. Yeah, I feel like it's pretty slept on here and there, but also, you know, there's like the shotguns are still like very good in the game, like the Judge, you know, We know that like Liquid are super fans of the judge, and I think the shotguns have seen a few nerfs, but still super good. What do you think about like the gun balance with the shotties? Are they feeling good to you, or do they need adjustment?
I think the shorty is still a bit powerful, but the nerf was really good. People aren't getting away with the most absurd kills and winning rounds because of it. I think the judge should still be nerfed. I think the
Yeah,
judge should be like $2,000. Like
yeah.
that gun can just literally hold down a site by himself. Like it's still really powerful. I think it should definitely be way more expensive. But outside of that, I think they found like a pretty good balance.
Yeah, it does feel like you can get someone with a body shot, just one body shot from a close medium range, and they can just die. It's just actually it is pretty insane.
Yeah, and like the
Uh,
aim punch on the pellets and stuff, it's annoying to play against sometimes.
So I think we kind of covered it mostly in terms of like some of the agents and more the interesting talking points around that. One thing I'm super interested as you're one of the I guess like highest tier CS pros coming across to Valorant kind of straight away, and like how are you finding the transition in general? Obviously, it's been a while now. The game's been out for quite some time, and we were talking off camera, and you were saying like how much you just enjoy playing the game, like you're putting lots of hours into it. As a CS player, I know we've asked other CS players this. Have you had to drop any habits from CS, or has there been any things that you have had to habituate? That's just a Valorant thing that's been difficult.
Yeah, there's a lot of CS habits that you would think might translate because at face value it's a 5v5 tactical FPS, but then you quickly realize that you have to play like Valorant. Uh, when it comes to post plants, when it comes to playing situationals, playing off people's contact, it's a little different in CS. So you're kind of playing textbook. You're playing the safest play, the right play, playing off your teammates. But in this game, you have to account for the abilities that the other team has left. Ultimates, does Omen still have his flash? That's really powerful. Sova Dart. Um, so you kind of have to take way more initiative when it comes to like these situationals and impose like your will onto the other team rather than play it textbook safe. I see a lot of like the teams of CS players playing these situationals textbook safe, and then it's falling apart because they're getting ability stacked onto them. When in reality, like you have to like kind of still take control around after you got the bomb down and stuff. Um, Outside of that, yeah, like ultimates, they're still like I don't know. I feel like some teams are still trolling when it comes to ultimates, when it comes to collecting the orbs and actually using them in the round. Like we'll play against teams and we'll be like, okay, careful, Sova's got his ult or Raze has his ult. And then I realize like 6 rounds later he still has his ult. Like not only like maybe they feel like they haven't found the right situation to use it or something, but not only is it like a waste for them to not use it, but then the the more rounds you go without using it is you're limiting yourself from getting it again too. Like if you get like a nice round, you could literally get your ult back in like almost a round. Um, so I feel like people need to focus on taking advantage of this too, because I see this happen so much with teams. Is like they're just not using ults, and I feel like you stack them the right way, you're gonna get a free round, and you use them on the right rounds to break another team's economy, and then you can take over a half.
Yeah, that's something that's I've always been. I mean, I think everybody's always been really impressed with Sinatraa with like finding like the value from the blind ults. That was just like very smart to kind of punish expected timings from teams that are very default heavy, where it's like quite predictable where they're going to be at certain periods of the round. And I feel like that is stuff like that is helping to advance how people think about some of these ults because it's so powerful. Yeah, I totally agree. It's really interesting to see that. Do you think that if let's say we're 6 months on, a year into Valorant, the game's really popping off, and CS is kind of where CS is at and hasn't changed too much. Do you think it'd be if it is attractive for other tier one CS pros to jump across? Do you think it will be very difficult for them to catch up, or will their kind of CS experience work out for them?
Um, I wouldn't say it's difficult, but there's definitely like a catching up. It definitely takes time to adjust to like how this game plays. And I think like that was like one of the benefits of like our team compared to like some of the other teams that switched over is that like even when closed beta came around and it was just unrated, we were stacking queues for like 10 hours a day. We were just playing nonstop, and like you have to do that when it comes to a new game. You're playing new maps, you're encountering different like micro situations, and you just have to like be comfortable facing them. I feel like some of these CS players are like switched over and they're like, oh, this is just like CS, and like they're just practicing and they're not taking like that individual time to play and like be comfortable in these like different angles and the way people play like these tiny situations that like stack up and make a difference. Um, so any like tier one CS pro that wants to switch over probably definitely could, but they have to put the hours in. They like can't be lazy about it. Like you have to learn and like be familiar with like crosshair placement on maps and just the abilities. And like I'm noticing that. Like without specifically saying players is like they're not playing on like their own time and they're just playing like, scrims with their team, and then I realize like they're not recognizing certain situations and how to react, at least in the way like I feel like the people on my team would. So it's definitely a matter of like putting the work in, and that's why it's not just like CS players, it's Overwatch players that switch over. If they play the game enough, they look at it like critically, they put productive hours in, like they'll do just as well as like a CS player.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It definitely seems like there can be. I feel like CS is an interesting one because there is such a like a celebrity level to the tier one players, and they all the tier one players these days have such amazing mechanics and fundamentals, and I feel like there's definitely like an ego check that is like the knowledge, the game knowledge and intuition that you're talking about, and it's like a CS player coming across. I feel like you could get that sense of I'm a CS player, and being in the pro circuit, I have this kind of sense of myself, and this game feels easier than CS in terms of the mechanics. But at the same time, like a lot of it's hidden. In this, in like as you said, like knowledge and intuition, you can only gain those things by just putting the hours in. So, yeah, because I do see a lot of people that are like, oh, it's not as hard as CS, and it's just different. I guess is a
Yeah,
important thing. You got to respect it.
I can definitely relate to that statement. Like, one of the biggest things to like switch it over was in CS. I feel like if I was playing against players that like, I knew I was like mechanically better than in CS in like a face hug or something, I feel like I could just run out and like win every duel, and not take a lot of chip damage. Like, I felt super confident in just being able to ego challenge people if I was like playing a bit more casually, and get away with it in CS. Well, in this game, like it was so frustrating at first when I realized like these are players in CS that I know I could just like outduel. But in this game, like it's way more 50-50. It's every both players have like way more of a chance in taking this duel, and I forced myself to like think like, okay, I can't just be taking these mindless duels. I have to have an advantage in any like duel I face, any fight I take. I have to have the upper hand. I have to find out like how I could have had it, and not just take these like straight up aim duels. I think that's another thing with the players transitioning is like tier one CS pros are definitely way more disciplined. I think that contributes a lot, and they'll have a better time in this game than like at least in terms of building consistency than some other players like maybe that didn't have a lot of experience in CS, because I've noticed in this game that because of this, like because of like the smaller mechanical skill gap, people are taking quote unquote like bad fights and getting away with it more, and then when you're rewarded with it, you continue to take it. And so it's good when like you take like a dry fight and you win with a vandal and you can open up a site and you've taken over a round. It's gonna win your rounds, but it's also like the worst way to like build consistency. Like it's not a consistent system, and that's why you're seeing a lot of inconsistent teams. You're seeing like, I think outside of like us, TSM, maybe even C9 sometimes. I think they're very guilty of this too. Is like you're seeing a lot of teams just lose to teams that you feel like they should be, or like they'll play each other a day after each other and like win one and lose one, is because they're just taking these straight up aim duels, and it's not like they're not following a system or a consistent way to play, and that's like a double-edged sword when it comes to it being kind of easier to like get headshots.
I totally feel you on this one as well, especially like because I'm experiencing in Diabolical where I'm like competing at the moment, where I have like I have like really good understanding and fundamentals from like years past dueling, where it was more about like having like good rotations and timings and like playing the map and all of that, and not focusing as much on the shots. And in the current meta, it's like very rewarding to take these gamble fights. And so I'm seeing lots of players that are like telling my stream like, this guy's just gambling. Like he may beat me in this match, but I'm going to be the better player. And it seems like kind of the same thing. It's very confusing to people who don't have the analytical backing to understand that they're even making a mistake when they're taking these fights. And I know in CS2, there's like there's always going to be these kinds of players that will be rewarded, and they'll remember the time when they got the 4K like Deagle like one shots or whatever from this certain spot, and they'll always feel good about it, even if it's a bad spot. But I guess that's just the human nature. So it's good to see that you guys have that stuff on lock. It's been really interesting to follow your team because I know that even when TSM were kind of on top of the NA scene towards the beginning, I know that us at Immortal Minds, we were doing like demo reviews of you guys, and we're like, TSM's winning right now, but we feel like Sentinels is playing better, even though the game is like weirdly close or they are even losing. And so it felt like you guys were always sort of on the right track with what you were doing. Um, does that come down to just spending so much time playing together? Do you guys do a lot of theory sessions? Where's the theory and analytical component behind the preparation that you guys do?
Yeah, very early on, we were like when TSM was like considered the best team. We were still experimenting with our fits too, like in the initial tournaments, and it's like hard to progress when you don't have like your set five, just like set to move forward. And then beyond that, it takes match experience. Like after first five, I think our first result, the first Ignition series, we lost to FaZe and got like fifth, sixth or something on bind. And it was like embarrassing loss, but we realized okay, like that specific match is what made us change the way we approach bind, the way we approach map control. It's what made us rework it, and it made us like made it one of our best maps. It made us like sit back, rewatch the match, talk about it, get in a server, talk about how we wanted to approach this situation, protocols we want to follow when we hit this site or the other site. And it took us losing that match in that fashion and being eliminated from the tournament to make that one of our best maps because we learned so much from it. And that's what it takes is like it takes match experience, but it takes handling losses really well, uh, getting in the server and being able to talk about like what we need to fix. That's just like the natural progression of teams, and it's all about how you handle it, how you talk to each other, how you approach it. And I feel like we have like a really healthy way of talking to each other. We don't hesitate after playing a match to just rewatch it, talk about it, and talk about the changes we need. Like maybe we don't shy away from like maybe you should be doing this more, or you shouldn't have done this. And I think that's like one of the best dynamics that we have is being able to just work off each other, and like that helped us just progress up from where we started at.
So we were talking actually before, additionally, sort of about the kind of routines that each of you go through, because Mike was mentioning that Sig doesn't tend to play much matchmaking, just tends to stick to some of the scrims, and I think many people consider Sig one of the absolute best players in the game, and it's amazing how well he is taken to this game, coming from CS and just thinking how he thinks about it and how he plays. But you're out there grinding the matchmaking and yeah, how does it work for each player on Sentinels?
Yeah, Sick. Like I know he doesn't necessarily enjoy streaming, but he still plays like a few ranked games every day. Even yesterday I played like 3 or 4 with him. Um, But for him, I think he mostly enjoys deathmatching, and I think the solo queue matchmaking experience is very frustrating for him because obviously he looks at the game in like a very tactical way, and then you go into ranked, and it's just a shit show of just people just doing whatever they want and running around. There's not a whole lot of like thought process going into their rounds, and so that's why like he doesn't necessarily enjoy it. Um, but I think we have like a very like healthy practice schedule in terms of like um we don't necessarily play like 7 scrims in one day and just burn each other out and just it's just not even productive by the fifth. We keep it very very simple. 4 scrims a day, um just like an hour of server work. If there's nothing to talk about, we won't even like waste our time for server work and get in and people just fool around and waste it. We'll get on and just like maybe play an extra scrim or something. um I think for the most part, the other guys enjoy playing. Like maybe Zom's not as much on his free time as well, but like me, Dapper Sinatraa, will always play like for 10 hours late night, and I think it's good. Um, it's good at just like recognizing like the different things people start doing. It definitely helps, I think, more so than it hurts.
I was gonna ask you about like the theory side of it as well, because I know a lot of teams, especially before First Strike got announced, where like we said before, we're just kind of like being on every day, scrimming, streaming, all that. But what, like you said, you guys kind of do like an hour of server work sometimes. You ever like talk about like, oh, I saw this like in some match I was watching, or I just had this really good idea and just try a bunch of stuff out?
Yeah, people don't shy away from presenting ideas. I see, like, even from playing ranked, like there's stuff I've seen, like, a random Diamond 3 dude that I thought was cool, and like, I'll try to bring it up in like server work or something. Um, but not only that, it's like an hour server work sounds pretty short. Like when I was playing with Blame F, we'd have like 3 hour server work sessions or something absurd in CS. Um, but people will take like their own time, like Sinatraa will be like, yo, let's hop in custom real quick, let me test these arrows. Or Mike will be like, okay, yo, I want to test these like these see like these cipher chips or something, maybe we could talk about this. And like that's outside of like our own practice. People taking their own initiatives, I think that's a really healthy way, that shows that people are here to like, they really want it. They're not just like, okay, on for a practice day. It's like a day at the job or like at work. Then you get off and you're not even thinking about it. Um, in our group chat, if people see stuff like, like the European teams are doing or something, like we'll post Twitch clips of the cool stuff we see, and then like we'll talk about it. Or we have like a Discord with like our notes, just the stuff that we want to talk about. Like if anyone thinks that we should talk about something on a certain map or something they saw, like we just go through that. Um, and I think that's all it is. That's all this game is like um, talking to each other and like becoming like getting on the same page. It's like all these different looks, understanding how to approach them, how to react, and if we're all on the same page, like things will just move smoothly like a system.
Speaking of which, I don't believe you ever IGL'd in CS. Is that right?
No, I was always like the second voice on a team, and like maybe I'd call CT sides, like especially because I was an opper from the very beginning, like playing off my spawns or stuff or dictating at least the CT sides. But in CS, no, it was always like also being an opper in CS is like you kind of have to have an ego. You have to be a bit more selfish and like go for kills and like base around you, and then it's like a very different transition to Valorant where I have to be like way more selfless. The round's not about me, um, and getting kills, and it's about how the round plays out and what our options are, and just like dictating the pace of it. um it's like obviously like a really big learning experience for me, but I feel like I played with a ton of different IGLs in CS. I played with Dazed, I played with Steel, Daps, Shongares, Stanislaw, and I feel like it was like it was a natural progression for me, because when building the team, we talked about like certain roles in IGL, and I realized that I did not want to I did not want to get an IGL that was going to sacrifice in terms of firepower or like any excuse like that. I wanted to make sure that this team is like 5 players that are capable of taking over a round. I think it's really crucial, and it's not like a fair excuse if you're the IGL to be consistently losing fights you should win or playing situations like poorly. So instead of like looking for an IGL's exclusive role and glossing over that fact, I figured I'll just take it over myself.
That's awesome to hear, actually. And also, I love the sort of combined, or like taking the sort of best of all of the past or IGLs that you kind of served under. Is there any that stand out in terms of things that you learned and are applying, or find things that you find super valuable now as an IGL yourself?
I think that Sean Garris obviously was like one of my favorite teammates ever. We played on 3 different teams together in CS and spent a lot of time. I think he taught me the most when it comes to approaching like tactical FPS and Counter Strike. When it comes to being a leader and like looking at situationals and stuff, I definitely learned the most from him. He's by far the best leader that I played with, and but it's not like the team is actually run like the way I played with him, because when I played with him, things were way more structured. The rounds were way more played out, and I realized that when there's too much structure in a team, especially in CS as well, uh, in CS you can get away with it a lot more, but in this game, the focus of the players end up becoming uh about doing the strat or the structure right. It's like a robot following a script more so than just playing the round to win it. Um, you lose that focus. You're thinking so much about I need to do this because this is how we went over it, and then I need to do this next, and this is the next step, rather than like recognizing what the other team's doing and reacting to it, and not just following a script. Because you have to, like, there's so many different looks in this game. You have to be able to react. You can't just fall in these structures. Like, I remember when I first watched T1 play, like, I know they do tons of server work. Like, I'm sure they have tons of structure, and I saw them, like, they looked so timid, like, when they were playing. They looked like, they're just trying to do the stuff that they talked about, and they forgot to just play the game in when they're around, in, like, the most broad way of putting it. And, like, that's, like, something that's, like, kind of how, like, DAP's called, Stanislaw called. It wasn't nearly as structured. Um, and so it's just, like, finding that balance. Like, you obviously need, like, protocols and stuff to fall back on, but you need to encourage people to, like, play to their strengths and um, be, like, not predictable.
What do you think is sort of like the most challenging thing as an IGL in Valorant? Because it is such a different game, and there's like losing one player. It's not just losing a player, but actually like an agent, which changes so much.
Yeah, so, like, your utility is so limited, and then you have only certain characters with utility to take map control. And so when you do that, or when you use that utility to, like, commit to a site, like, that's it. You have committed that utility. Like, your fallback plan, like, to audible it is, like, your options are not that good. That's one thing, is like if you commit to a plan, you better hope it works. Like, you better hope you do it right, because, like, not everyone has two flashbangs in a smoke, and, like, you can call off a strat, like in CS. Like, in CS a lot of times you'll like call off a strat for whatever reason, if you've been stopped by something, and then you can go and hit the other site while they're rotating or something. But in this game you can't really do that. um and that becomes a challenge, and people getting picked off early, the jet ops. uh the whole plan for the round might change because someone got picked off, and there goes our smokes, or there goes our flash or something. uh so you just have to constantly be thinking. I feel like I'm staring at my map more than I'm staring at my crosshair, and it becomes really difficult to play your own game, because you're, like, thinking about the abilities they've used, what they've got, how they've been playing. It's so much more thinking, in my opinion, than it is when calling CS, because you just have, like, a visual of the 5 players on the map. It doesn't matter what characters they are.
Yeah, and I think as well, like, there's just infinitely more to keep track of. Because remember when beta came out, all the CS people were complaining that you could see, like, the enemy team's money. But then it's like, well, they can keep their utility after the round, so it drastically changes, like, how you think about it. Because if they save a weapon, and then, oh, this guy has some utility left over, and then, oh, he's, like, one orb off of his ult, it drastically changes around, rather than, oh, they can afford a half buy, pretty much.
No, I definitely agree with that. Same thing with, like, seeing the other team's ultimate abilities. Some people, I remember in the close beta, didn't think that was, like, a good idea, but I think that's, like, it's really good, because that adds on top of mind games as well. Like, people are gonna play certain ways when they know, like, a team has an ult, and then you can take advantage of that mind game without even using the ultimate. Um, so yeah, there's just, like, so much more to think about when it comes to approaching, I think, these maps.
How do you think like Nitro is going to do coming across? And obviously he's building 100 Thieves there with like Steel and Hiko. Like how's that going to go? Because that's three really big personalities, so much experience between all of them. But Nitro is definitely the like. I mean, he's got to be the most experienced at the top level North American CS player that's come across. So how's he going to fare?
Okay, I think Nitro is gonna do really well for himself. He's obviously, like, I mean, he's a chimp. He's, like, a champion. He knew how to win in CS, and I think that when you're able to do that, you can apply that skill set and, like, understanding or critical thinking, like, into something else too. Um, for him specifically, I know, like, I've been watching him play. He's pretty good. And, like, he was, like, when I played with him in CS, he was a really good teammate. I've just always heard good things about him, so I think he will find success. When it comes to 100 Thieves as a team, Um, I'm not necessarily confident. I know I talked about this on my stream before. It was like I watched a podcast with Steel. Um, I forgot on where, and he's talking about how like he like kind of discredited all the teams in Valorant right now. Said that like they weren't smart in CS. They were like MDL players. That's why they don't understand this game. Like they're not critically thinking. They're doing things for the sake of doing it. And he's like talking big about like he's got his way to approach the game. So I'm like curious to see what they have in store. But I think it's very easy to like talk and say that you've got all this stuff, and then it's different to like actually get in a server and apply it, because I think that Steel might think of this like very tactically and very structured, and then like you can think like in a perfect world I'm gonna be able to do this in a server, but then when you actually get in the server, like things might not go the way he plans, and then uh like you have to come up with a game plan. Like you can't just fall apart. So we'll see. It also depends on like the other players that 100 Thieves get, but that's a team like I'm looking forward to play.
Yeah, it's interesting. It kind of comes back to like what you were saying before. Like so much of this seems to be down to like the team chemistry, not just being able to talk to each other, but it's like having this trust that you can kind of all just be on the same page. So even if there's not like a obvious structure to follow, people just are playing can play the game, and everyone's just playing the game, but on the same page. So it's just going to work out. I definitely feel like you described T1 super well, and being too rigid with the CS approach. So that's really interesting one. Quick side thought. We wanted to have Dapper on the show, but he sleeps until 2 p.m. or something. What the hell's the deal with that?
Yeah, this guy's got the most degenerate sleep schedule of anyone, but I don't care like how he like runs his day-to-day life, as long as he's never late for practice, and he never is. He's always on, he's focused, alert, and like that's okay for me. Like whatever else he does with his day-to-day, like
Yeah.
wake up at 6 a.m., stream all morning, and then sleep, and then wake up at 9 p.m. or something, is fine. Like people have their routines, I guess. And so I could say like that's the good thing about our team is like like you see some of us stream really late or like weird sleep schedules, but everyone's very punctual. They take practice seriously. Nobody's late. Nobody's messing around. So well, we're definitely messing around and joking around, but nobody's like um waiting on someone to wake up or some BS like that.
All right, all right. Well, maybe I can. I'll dream that we'll get him on the show one day. Maybe it will kind of work out. We'll see. But just to you guys in the chat, we'll be doing the Ask Us Anything segment in a few minutes. So prepare your questions, get them in the chat, and we'll get to that shortly. Right. So I wanted to ask you also about some of the things in the North American scene. There's been a lot of like flux on some of the lineups and teams and so on. We have some of the changes with Envy and Finesse. He's got a couple brand spanking new players to help him out from T1, Food and Crashies. I'd love to get your take on what you think this lineup's going to do. Is it going to work out?
So Envy's a funny team to me. Like we're 10-1 versus them, and I always joke about this team because they literally just copy all the shit we do. Like they copy so much of like our comp. Like we scrimed Ascent against them the other day. Mummy's like up and on Breach, and like it's just it's really funny to see. But like, who knows yourself better than like yourself? Like, so when you go against the things that you do, like like where the weaknesses lie and the flaws. That's why I feel like we always had the upper hand on this team. Like I don't know if FNS is just like straight up copying the stuff we do, but it's funny to me. I think that the team is definitely improved. Um, the first, well, they made the roster change. The first scrim we played against them, we destroyed them, and then I remember recently, like we lost like one of the first maps we lost in Prague, very closely to them a few days ago in a while, and uh, I remember thinking, okay, like they're building some structure and chemistry, but we'll see. It's the same thing as like you've got like a bunch of really good players, and then when you get in the server, it's a bit different. When you get in the match server, it's a bit different than in scrims. It's very easy in this game to get in the scrim and get away with like obviously taking these fights and making these individual plays. But then if you get in the match server and you're not doing the same things, uh, then you're just gonna get shut down. Like everything's gonna feel off if people aren't taking like the initiatives that they take in scrims and getting this map control and making this play. and they're not doing this in the match server, it's gonna feel off for everyone, and they're not gonna find that success. And like that's like another big thing. It's always been in like esports and in CS too. Is like you've got these teams that are really good in pracs because players will play way more loose and individual in scrims, and then when they get in a match server and they're not doing these things and they're being a bit more timid, and then it just doesn't work out for them.
I'd love to also like quickly get your thoughts before we move into the AUA on Dignitas, because it's you've got the CS head in there, Def, who obviously is a past teammate of yours, and he was another CS player that recently moved across. What are your thoughts with Dig and Def?
Yeah, I know Dig's kind of like in a rebuilding phase since they let go of like two of their players, but Def's always been a really smart player. When I played with him Complexity, towards the end there when we replaced Stanislaw, he took over as IGL, and I could tell like it was a natural progression for him too. Like he was always like a leader figure, and he understood the game. Um, their team, I think they're a pretty good team. I know like there's so much stuff about like how people started saying like they specifically prepared for TSM in this tournament, and their whole play style was to counter this one team. Like, I know that's not the case, obviously, from talking to them and stuff. But I think that's like just like a weird way to talk about a team. Is like if you're playing a tournament that you're trying to win and you're paid to play a video game and you practice this, like you're gonna counter teams. Like you're gonna study other teams. Like if you're not doing that, then you're trolling. Like if you're not building a game plan for a specific team, then like you're not doing your job. You know, like it's not like this team is like that's not an excuse you can write off. Like of course they're gonna counter. Of course TSM is looking at other teams and trying to counter them. Of course we are like, you know, we'll watch other teams before we play them in matches together and we'll talk about the stuff they do. It's not like we're building our whole strategies around like, you know, when he does this, we're gonna do this or this. It's more so that we like when we get in the server, we recognize like their tendencies or like on this kind of round he tends to play here, like, you know, okay, if these people are like this, then the last person on the site might be in this certain spot. Um, and it's more like the comfort like confidence factor too. It's like um, when even if the stuff that you study is not what they do necessarily, you go into a match mentally more confident because you feel like you have an idea what they're gonna do. Like you're not going in blind, and that's something I always thought about in CSS too. Is like if your team has that preparation and that you've talked about like a team, they're just gonna go in playing more confidently because they feel like they know what they're doing. Even if the other team threw all the stuff out the window, you're just gonna play better.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'd love to cap it off as well with just getting what is your top 4 NA ranking right now on teams? Who the best? Who is worse than you?
Okay. I'm gonna definitely put us at number 1.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm gonna put. Dang, it's tough. Personally, I might put Cloud9 at number 2. I think
Oh,
that
nice.
like um building consistency is like important as a team rather than like head-to-head matchups. And if you're like, you know, winning one tournament and then getting out of groups in the next, like that's a little bit different. Like that's not a good look for your team. That's not like there's no way like you could say that you're like, you know, the best team or whatever. So I'll put TSM at 3rd, Envy 4th. But obviously after this like little break we've had, like this could look very, very different depending on teams, like, you know, teams not practicing the last few weeks or something because there weren't tournaments. But regardless, like I can imagine it's going to be pretty competitive going into this first strike tournament.
Nice. I like the C9 second. That was cool. I didn't expect that, but that makes a lot of sense to me. We've looked at C9 quite a lot. Right, it's time to get everyone's questions from the chat. Mike, have you seen anything that would be a good starting point?
I don't think we have anything in yet, but I was gonna ask ShahZam first. Like, obviously, you guys, I don't know if you've signed a coach or looked at a coach or trialing with one yet, but do you think with first strike coming around and there's no invites or anything, it kind of necessitates maybe getting a coach a little bit sooner just because of the workload? Or
Yeah, we've been looking for a coach since the beginning. We were talking to someone in particular, but it ended up not panning out because like different like, you know, responsibilities and like other stuff people wanted to pursue unfortunately. So we're like back to the drawing board when it comes to looking for coach. But I really want to. I really want to find someone that does not like structurally take over the team though. I've had coaches in CS that kind of like come in and try to take over like the way the whole team is run or like the way we play in the server or certain maps. I don't want that because I feel like we have something very healthy going on right now in the team with the way we approach practices. But I do want someone that can like kind of tactically help me come up with new ideas, the smaller gimmick plays, um, instead of like just the defaults that we've been running. So we're still looking, hopefully before first strike, but I know this tournament is stretched out pretty wide, like over 2 months or something. So maybe even during the tournament or something.
All right, Cyber X Kills asks, what are your thoughts and Six's thoughts on Sage?
Yeah, Sage has been nerfed to the ground. I don't agree with the things that the devs have done with Sage. I think they're like exclusively looking at like the statistics of the casual player base and basing all of their decisions off that. When I think in a game like this, you have to give it the eye test too. Like you have to really look at how like certain characters are being played out and not just like the stats of like, okay, this one rate, this character's pick rate or whatever. You have to like give it the eye test and see how it's actually being played. Like Sage was just nerfed to the ground. No team is running Sage in practices. I can't remember the last time I saw Sage in my ranked games. Like I play like an absurd amount of games every day, and like nobody's running Sage anymore. They really just like ruined the character. I know Sick was very upset about the nerf, but I think he's having a lot more fun with the characters he's playing now. He's actually the one on Breach now. Um, so yeah, it's I think he's having a lot of fun playing the character. Obviously, his 3 flashes are very powerful. So
Nice. That's good to hear at least. Jeremy Keys asks, how is ShahZam such a superior AWPer compared to everybody else?
oh my god, no, I mean I'm not like I might think I am myself or whatever, but like reality is like my roles in the server or my responsibilities are completely different from like other operators. Um, it's obviously just like a fun weapon to use. As my whole CS career is based around it. I love the op, but um, like head to head or statistics or whatever, obviously like I'm not at the top, but I just know that like my responsibilities lie so much differently on this team compared to like wherever else I've played on CS and stuff. And so at the end of the day, it's just like we're just trying to like get our team to win rounds.
From Billy Bob Ill Jr., we have when Valorant's agent pool becomes fleshed out, 20 plus agents, do you feel like Valorant will have a higher skill ceiling than CSGO?
Um, Maybe like one team. It's impossible to tell. Like it's impossible to tell like what kind of agents they add and stuff. But I think that it's gonna become more and more difficult to be like consistently like a good team with all these different looks. I don't know if they'll add like a pick bin or something. Um, but I think it's just only gonna get more and more challenging. When they add new characters, when the characters change, it becomes different. Like in how you play, like with the breach nerf. The breach buff that I keep talking about. It's you have to play very differently when you're facing 3 flashes. It's becoming so annoying. But you just have to adapt. Like that's the thing about playing a game like this is you have to understand like changes are gonna constantly happen, and if you want to be a good team, you have to keep talking about it, keep getting in the server, and figuring out what's best for you.
Right. Do we have any, Mike, any ones that you like to look up? We've got loads of good questions, actually.
Yeah, one person just, I think it's a fairly simple one, but Phantom or Vandal right now after the Vandal buffs.
Phantom is by far the better gun for me personally. Still, even with the Vandal, like, being buffed or whatever, and the time to kill is like people do this argument like, the one shot headshot from a distance or the time to kill from a distance is like, I feel like those are the same people that are like that think the Vandal is insane because of this are the same people that are taking like the bad duels, like the bad fights. Like you shouldn't be taking these long range fights. Like if you watch our team play, all of our contacts on chokes, all of our fights, nobody's taking a long range duel. Like that, you don't know if you're facing an op. You don't like it's like a random like we get up close like when we fight other teams. Like we're not afraid to like take these close range fights. And I feel like that's why all of us still use the Phantom or something, like because it's by far the better gun. When you need to spray, when you need to adjust and spray transfer, like you're gonna be able to multi-frag with this gun better.
That's actually a great answer. I feel like the whole point around the Vandal already describes me. So NWL11 asks, are there any teams that Sentinels looks at for inspiration or ideas outside of North America?
I think that the European teams are evolving. Well, maybe recency bias, but they're evolving faster than NA potentially. Like the way FPX and Liquid and G2, you can tell that they're getting better and better, and they're pushing each other to get better. Like a lot of the criticism early on was like, oh, NA is better. There's way more competition, and it was true. While like EU is like streaming their matches and stuff, but now you can see like the teams are really thinking about um the way to approach the game. There's like a Reddit thread, something about FPX, and how they like played for ultimate abilities and stacked them up while like Liquid didn't. And I think that's what it was. But it's cool to see like the level of detail that's being focused on with these European teams. So um, I wouldn't say there's a specific team, but we definitely like to watch the games, and like whatever we see that we think is cool or like is gonna work, we'll take. There's like some stuff on Split I remember I saw G2 do that I like implemented to our gameplay very early on. And yeah, that's it's like you should just be open to like whatever region, whatever, like even ranked. You see something cool in ranked, like who's to say it's not gonna work with your team in a match?
Fair play. A quick one. Xclade asks, Ghost or Classic and Armor?
I loved pistols in CS:GO. Um, I felt like CS:GO pistols took so much skill, and in this game, it's been so frustrating because the pistols feel so random. I feel like the body shot damage with the Ghost is so high that people just spam mouse one and they hope they get a headshot because like RNG spread and like spamming body shots. So I feel like the Ghost is still the way to go because you can just like spam it and like hope you get a headshot with like a 2 body tags and get the kill. When I shoot the Classic, I feel like my bullets just don't even shoot straight. They just go everywhere. But then I watch some players get Classic armor and their Classic is like a laser beam. So I don't understand it. That was like one of the things is like I felt like my CS:GO pistols are really good, and then this game it feels so inconsistent.
You're like one of the
Yeah.
few people that I've actually heard agree with me on like the Ghost like body shot damage is way too high. Like even on like I think that's why people do it so much on second round. It's not so much economy sometimes. It's just like way too viable.
Yeah, the gun is so strong still. Like, I wish pistol rounds weren't so random when it comes to like taking fights and stuff. At least it feels this way. So
Yeah, I agree with you too as well. Like that was one of the things I loved with CS. It's just feeling like some pride in being good with pistols, which it doesn't feel like the reward is there in this game. I completely agree on that one.
yeah, like I feel like I'll hit a sick pistol clip some days, and then some days I'll completely like just be outdueled. Like someone will be just spamming mouse one and like get the lucky headshot, and I'm just like, okay, well that sucks.
All right. Do you see anything else, Mike? I'm scanning as well.
I have one I haven't seen anywhere yet, but obviously like we're closing in on that next agent mark, which seems kind of like mental already. So I was just gonna see what like category do you think it would be? Like, do you think it's an initiator, controller? Because obviously we just got a Sentinel and then a Duelist before.
Yeah, I have no idea. Maybe an initiator. Definitely not another duelist. Hopefully. Um, but I've no idea like the direction they want to go. It's definitely like their plans is definitely adding a lot of agents, and I'm always kind of worried and like the kind of agents they will add and like the way they think about it. Like I hope they don't just add characters for the sake of adding them because they need to like come up with some ideas. Like because if you like you could really ruin the pacing of the game too if you add more characters like with abilities that will just like slow a team down and you're forced to sit back, like a team stacking killjoy mollies now or like a sage wall. Like um I'm like completely lost at like what they could add, but I'm personally hoping they start focusing on the maps a bit more. Whether it's like I know like they have a set plan for adding maps, but also modifying the maps. That was like one of the coolest things about Counter Strike is like the devs did not shy away from changing the maps. Like the only map update we saw on like Bind and Haven and I think Ascent was like they threw some props in certain corners to make them not 50-50. But personally, I think that's like a bit lazy map design when like they should really look at how the maps are being played and like experiment with like restructuring them.
I think that's a really good answer. So Immobil asks, can you ask about Dapper and how the addition of him into Sentinels changed the dynamic of the team?
Yeah, he's just as important as anyone else. He's just like a huge part of the team. He's kind of like the second voice that I go to as well. You know, if I feel like I don't have a read or like I'm not necessarily sure, like I know I can like count on him to like break down what he sees at least and like not shy away from giving his opinion. Um Dapper's like just an essential part of the team. Like you need that second voice. It can't just be one person like putting out ideas and like people chiming in here and there. I think when the rounds or the game becomes a conversation of like two people thinking about it and like coming up with a plan, like it's better. You know, you've got like obviously 5 minds in the server and like you want to use them all, but there's like some sort of hierarchy and he's just like he's helped me a ton.
Awesome. Yeah, he seems like quite the character too. So seems
Yeah,
like you got some good mix on the team.
yeah, he's something else for sure.
Right. So we've got this one's been popped up a few times. What are your thoughts on the Korean and Japanese teams, especially Absolute Jupiter and Vision Strikers? If you actually watch them.
I have not watched them recently, but like I do read or like I'll see like clips or highlights of like people breaking down stuff, and I know like they're pretty creative. I feel like it's honestly bad on me not to have watched the like Southeast Asia, Korea, East Asia scene, but it's probably something I should like start to focus on. I think there's already so much to do when it comes to like practicing and like playing and within the NA region you're looking at it and then the European region and there's a whole lot of Valorant going on right now.
I would definitely
Yeah.
say look at like their opening round setups, like what utility sets they do, and then their retake utility is like really sick.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that like things have like we've been kind of looking at it like we haven't looked at other teams when we developed like the way we wanted to play. The way we approach rounds is we decided that regardless of what teams do, we're gonna play the way we want to or the way we think is best, and that's kind of like what we followed from the beginning. But obviously, if things stop working for us or a map doesn't go the way we plan, that's when we like fall back on like okay, let's take a look at like what other teams are doing and maybe it could work for us. But for the most part, like we're really good at playing and then talking about what happened. As basic as it sounds, like that's how you just get better at a team. Is like playing and thinking, okay, what could we have done better, and then let's do it the next time. And we don't really repeat the same mistake. So it's good.
All right. I think we've got time for one or possibly one and a quick one. So let's see. Anything else? We want to make it a good one. Let's see. I'm trying to be a good host and listen to you and also look at the chat. It's very difficult.
No, you're good. You're good.
Do you want to ask yourself a question? I don't know.
Uh,
Did you see anything good, Mike?
favorite and least favorite map for ShahZam? Why? Okay. I always hated Haven. Um, 3 bomb sites. I feel like they thought they were so creative with this idea, but it just made the map so random initially. Like when it comes to timings, people making individual plays to like push for info. Like you can't always account for all these different chokes, and so it made it really challenging for us to play at the beginning. Like Haven was just our weak map, a wash. I remember the PAX finals for C9. We lost the veto, and the decider map would have been Haven. I think it was this match. Decider map would be Haven, and we knew that like we had to win the other maps. Like we could not let it go to the 5th map because Haven is such a bad map for us. Now we've kind of started figuring out how we wanted to play the map and like building a consistent way. But it's definitely taken a lot of work and a lot of trial and error. We've run so many different comps on Haven. It's not even funny. We spent so much time working on this. Um, it's good we finally figured it out, but like you never know. Like one agent comes out, it could change everything or like the way people play. So I definitely don't like that map personally. My favorite map is Ascent. Ascent reminds me so much of Dust 2. Uh, I mean, even the structure of mid and stuff, but the way it plays like a Counter-Strike map. When you get map control, when you can do splits, you can straight up hit a site. I don't know. Ascent is like my favorite map to think about and see the different ways that teams play it. I see, like, every time I play Ascent, I feel like I see some teams coming up with some cool stuff. Like, the Cypher Cam on Cat. I forgot. I think I watched Dignitas do it or something. Just like bunch of cool stuff. It's a fun map to play.
Yeah, I totally agree with the Dust 2 thing. It's like strategically, it's like really interesting the way that you force defender rotations. They have to like respect the mid pressure, much like on Dusty, where you have to like place someone off of A into spawn to worry about the B split. It's like exactly the same dynamics. Really
Same
interesting, actually.
rotates, like
Yeah.
same concept. You've got Cat, like it's almost like A long. Like the fights are always going down in A long. It's so funny because like when we'll talk about certain strategies on Ascent, we'll allude to like like in Dust 2, like okay, like you do this and rotate like this, and so it's a familiarity, I guess, with this map.
For sure. All right. Well, with that said, that's I think that brings it to a close for today's episode. Shaz, what are you going to be up to? Where can people find you? Are you going to be streaming today?
Yeah, probably later today. Twitch.tv/ShahZam.
Nice. What are you going to be up to, Mike? Anything interesting?
I'm gonna check how my fantasy team's doing after this, but it's probably not doing very good. So
Nice. Well, I wish good things for you and your fantasy team. With regards to Immortal Minds, we'll be back on Wednesday with our demo review. We have yet to select a demo. I started doing this thing now, as I always mention this at the end of the Saturday show. Any demos you think that we should do some analysis on, Shaz? Any games you've seen in the pro or any pro matches that have taken place that are particularly interesting?
Us versus Dignitas, Pop Flash. No. Uh, I'm not sure. Uh, I don't know. I mean, honestly, the Blast tournament I haven't even seen yet. We've been like we've been practicing a lot, so maybe those, and then I'll tune in and watch it.
All right, sounds good. We'll we'll keep the search going. In terms of us, if you are new to this show, remember to hit up the Discord. We've got a great community that's always discussing matches. You can find great people to play with. We have a way for you to be able to select your own rank and agents and search for others, so you can get your queues going and maybe experience a little bit less toxicity in the matchmaking world of Valorant, which can be a harsh place at times. But we're here to make it a good or a better place. But other than that, and the demo review that's coming on Wednesday, make sure to follow the Twitter so you get notified as to what demo we're going to be doing. Or if you have suggestions, you can drop them in the Discord or via Twitter. We also have an Instagram account now as well. And if you missed most of this awesome interview, we will have the VOD going up tomorrow on YouTube, so make sure to check out the YouTube channel as well. With that said, we will be raiding. I'm not sure exactly who we're raiding, but we're going to raid someone. So let's get it on. Yeah, I have no idea who we're rating. Oh, we're rating Angel.
Angel,
Okay,
sick.
nice. Best Brimstone in the world, probably. He entry frags with Brimstone. What is not to love about that? All right, cheers, guys. We'll catch you on the next one.